Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this weekly Ag Weather Update for Farm Credit, brought to you by Nutrient Ag Solutions. We're going to start with some satellite data here on Sunday. This was just as the sun was setting. We're seeing what's left of those clouds from Tropical Storm Ophelia start to move their way out to open ocean. They left in their wake quite a bit of very heavy rainfall. Now, outside of this, before I show those rainfall totals, I do want to discuss two other systems, okay? We have the one that's spinning up here over the Red River Valley of the North, and throughout the weekend, this one produced a lot of severe weather that stretched throughout the plains and some locally heavy rainfall. You'll see that in a moment as well. But a lot of our attention is going to be going to this large storm system coming into the west. And what we're going to be seeing throughout much of AgSouth territory this week is going to be some interesting flow bringing in some scattered storms. But overall, we are going to go into a bit of a quieter week compared to last week. Now, what's interesting about this is, Ophelia was, of course, last Sunday when I recorded this, an area we were watching, right? I said, hey, just keep an eye on this very late in the week. It's one of those weeks I really wish I could have given you an update at the very end of the week just to tell you what the latest was. But we now know what it did, and it came through and dumped some very heavy rain. Now, just think about this. This was an area, parts of North Carolina, Virginia, that were in drought. Where the storms came through the Midwest and the plains, oops, just got a brand new image there, where they came through the Midwest and plains here, we are in drought. And where this big storm system's coming into the Pacific Northwest, we are in drought. Let me just take a look at it. Here's the new Drought Monitor. So now remember, this was released on September 21st. So this whole area just got, well, let's rephrase that. That area and through there just got a tremendous amount of rainfall. We saw big storms coming through the midsection of the country and several down here in the south. And we're going to watch a large storm system come in to this area. Now, in this video, I'm going to cover where I expect the next 7 to 14 days to kind of unfold with rainfall. We're going to talk about these temperature fluctuations we're expecting as well. But if you don't have much time and you just want to get to the long-range stuff, fast forward, because I'm going to get to all of that with these tabs right down here. Got a good summary of what we're thinking October is going to look like and all the way through winter. So we're ready to get there. But I'm fascinated by where the recent precipitation has been. Now, for the whole of the country, the big area I've been focused on is the drought that's lining up the Midwest and the Central Plains and the Southern Plains and the South of the United States. This area right in through here. And I've been focused a lot on what's going on in the Mississippi River. We've been looking quite a bit at Memphis, which is after where the Ohio River, and the Missouri River come into this. And for the last, 10 days or so, the Mississippi River at Memphis has been 8 to 10 feet below low stage. And that's because the soil moisture there look like this. Now, I mentioned a moment ago that the moisture has been coming in. This map was actually back on the 21st. This is 100 centimeter or 40-inch soil moisture. And again, we're just identifying those large areas of drought. Now watch what happens when I show you the latest data. So this was on Sunday. This was last week. This was on Sunday. Major changes in this map. A lot of moisture coming into this section of the country. A lot of moisture, of course, with Ophelia here. And let's just go have a look at it. That's what happened across the country this weekend. Now, in addition to our very heavy rainfall, which we'll take a close look at in a second, look at all the rain that did fall throughout parts of the upper Midwest, the northern plains, the central plains, this part of the Missouri Valley, then getting down here toward the Red River Valley of the South, but really more of this side of Oklahoma. Some locally very, very heavy rainfall and some big, big hail right in through here. Some 3 to 4 inch hailstones fell in this as well. But of course, the spotlight this weekend was just how much rainfall came through parts of South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia. And kind of zooming in on that area, but keeping our focus on North Carolina, you can see that radar estimated rainfall totals through 8 o'clock on Sunday night in certain places were over 6 inches. Some places topping 8 inches, and we had a lot of local flooding because of this. Now, it just got me thinking bigger picture, right? Because here we are starting a new season. On Saturday, we officially began fall. And when I say officially, what I'm talking about here is astronomically, we are now in fall, which means our number of daylight hours is now fewer than nighttime hours. And we're going to continue to lose them all the way until we get past about December 21st. But remember, summer is our longest season. All seasons are not equal in length. Maybe you were taught wrong when you were a kid, but I'm letting you know. Summer is actually sometimes 94 days, depending on how we kind of slice it up there. So it's our longest season. And as you look at this is what happened this summer. So this is all of summer statistics. So really I started this on June 21st and went to yesterday. And so we're just kind of getting a look at precipitation stats. Now, we talked all summer long about how we had very little evidence of having large systematic drought developing in AgSouth territory. Now, we were dry at times in southern Georgia. There were pockets of drought that developed throughout the Carolinas, especially getting up here in this whole side of North Carolina. But this is how precipitation statistics work. A few big events can wipe all of that out. Now, where we had that systematic long-term drought was across the south. It was in pockets of the Midwest and upper Midwest. It was along the Willamette Valley here. So we're just kind of getting that overall picture as we look back at summer. Now, when we look at month-to-date precipitation, now we can start to see a few more drier pockets beginning to show up in the southeast. But look at the Ohio Valley, extremely dry in through here as well. So again, it's just all about dissecting this in certain ways. And remember, I've got a whole host of tools on agweather.com that you can go play around with to see your local precipitation and compare it to the last 5 years if you'd like. But as we move forward in this forecast, this is what we're dealing with here today. We have a deep system that's off the northwest. Okay, we need to keep an eye on the west because ultimately it's going to dictate what we get in AgSouth territory. This is what's left of the circulation from Ophelia, and this is Philippe right over here, moving out in the open ocean. In fact, I want to go show you what we're expecting here. So Philippe is making its way, and it's likely going to stay out to open ocean. I'm not overly concerned about it getting there. There is, of course, another wave behind it. It's called 91L, so it's kind of a code name for our next system we're investigating. It's currently got a 70% chance of developing. Should it develop, now remember, we don't use the letter Q in the in naming things, so we're going to skip over to R. And if it gets named, it will be given the name Rena. And Rena was a name that we retired in 2005. It was Hurricane Rita, so that's where that name is going to drop off. Now, what is also interesting to me, although I don't think it's going to be a factor here, is that we finally see something, maybe brewing in the Gulf of Mexico. But as it stands, I don't anticipate this system affecting us. I think it's going to stay down here in the Gulf of Mexico and not make this hard turn to the north as we progress through this week. So let's get a quick look at where Philippe is going to go. And as we play the super ensemble out there, things are pretty well, matched up, through the next 48 hours. But look at the spread in the models once we get out here past day 5 and work our way out to day 7. So 7 days from now, look at the giant spread on where the models are forecasting this. One of the big reasons why we don't anticipate this getting off to the East Coast here and possibly impacting us is that we have too strong of a subtropical jet. And I'm going to make a big deal out about that because I want you to watch that carefully from now until April. Yes, that long I want you to watch the subtropical jet. So this is what I've got. That's where we think Philippe is going to go. Now, this is it. This is the mainstay of what I want you to be thinking about, and I'm serious. I want you thinking about it for 7 months. You see, we're looking down over for the North Pole, and you're looking at the wind speed, okay? And we just kind of follow it, kind of circumnavigate in this direction around the North Pole. So there's a polar branch, that's the faster winds that are closer to the North Pole, and there's a subtropical branch like this one right here. Now, what I want you to be paying attention to is that as we look at every new forecast video I produce for you, I want you to watch that subtropical jet. Because by the time we start October, we have a little bit of an issue with it, okay? The polar jet's coming around like this and staying up here. The subtropical jet keeps picking up momentum and coming across the country, but it kind of keeps leaving us in the void. So overall, when I show you this forecast, there's not a whole lot going on through the next 7 or 8 days, except for in southern Georgia and maybe parts of the coastal Carolinas. But no massive weather system is currently being forecast to move through. You say, why? Well, the hole. There's no good flow. But as we think about where this might go, I'm going to watch the beginning of October. And the top thing for me is to see if this setup will be common this fall and winter. Because what we've got is a piece of the jet that races around like this and then dies somewhere here before it gets into the Gulf of Alaska. Flow goes weakly over the top and comes back down and tries to exit like this. Maybe it'll be down here sometimes, doesn't matter. It's going to make that path. But then we're going to watch from Hawaii to the Baja of California, or Hawaii to California, coming across Texas. Much stronger winds than you've seen in a number of years. And what this could potentially do is really set off a lot of systems across the south. And they have to make this hard hook north when they get toward the Appalachian Mountains or when they get toward the East Coast. Remember, our storm systems that come across the country just don't go way out like this. They always take a turn. And that's partly because of the warmth of the ocean in here. It's partly because of the way storm systems spin. There's lots of reasons for this, but that's the big idea. So that's why I'm spending some time on this. Now, in the near term, the influence is minimal. But in the longer term, there's something more to be discussed there. And I want to keep you thinking about that as I go toward the end of this. So looking here at Sunday's forecast for the remainder of your week, this is what our government suggests. It's the WPC, the Weather Prediction Center. And as I mentioned, overall there was a bit of a drier forecast for North Carolina, but it does not mean dry. As you go farther south into Georgia, we see wetter conditions. And we need to talk about what's getting this going here, because we're going to keep a very close eye right along this area for potentially some heavy rain this week. Now, our high-resolution models beginning early on Monday morning are going to be showing us that as we progress through the day on Monday, there will be some isolated showers that could show up in North Carolina. That'd be in the afternoon. Then as we progress into Tuesday, there's this push of moisture. It's kind of coming around like this in the low levels, but at the surface, there's no strong wind field in through here. So the models by Tuesday afternoon are trying to kick off some isolated storms from South Carolina in through southern Georgia. Can you kind of see that? Now, this model will be no model will get this right. Even though it's only out there just a day and a half, it's not going to predict the exact location of this. What we're looking for here is to see if there's reason for it. And what I've got out of this is I got flow coming across the top like this and some surface flow like that, which basically means you've got convergence. You've got stuff coming together. So we're not going to rule out the chances for isolated storms even earlier in the week here and then in parts of North Carolina. Most of you are going to miss it. Most of you are not going to get this moisture. But we need to see where it's going after that. I'm going to flip over to the European model to pick up with this, okay? So as we play through Monday, getting out there to Tuesday. Now look, can you see how Tuesday evening, even the European model, which is a non-convection allowing model, is still attempting to put down some areas of locally heavy rainfall. As we play this forward into Wednesday and Thursday, you just continue to see scattered showers and storms Wednesday into Thursday down in Georgia and South Carolina. And as we get later in the week, it's here on Friday. And you say, well, why is the air flowing like that? Well, there's a big high pressure cell here. So you're getting flow coming around it like this. And there's lower pressure to the south, and the flow's kind of coming around like this. And the two things are helping to push some moisture in there. Now, I told you earlier that I was really watching the West Coast. You see this? This is an indication that we're starting to pick up for a while here a whole lot more activity in the polar jet versus the subtropical. So that's why we tend to just lose out on the big rainfall events right now as we progress through this next week. But I believe you're going to go into a pattern where it's going to feel week on, week off, week on, week off in terms of precipitation. And we just need to see how this is going to transition into week 2, and I'll show you that in just a few seconds. But as you noticed, no major organized systems rolling through, but that doesn't mean no precipitation. I want to show you the total amount being added up by the European model. Ready? So this is going to play through this week. And there you go. This is the Tuesday into Wednesday chances of rain increasing in parts of the Appalachian Mountains, but getting here, this is really more the Blue Ridge Mountains, and then getting down into South Carolina and then look southern Georgia. Best chances of being the wettest. We then play this through Thursday into Friday. The European model is trying to push some very heavy rainfall out of Georgia into South Carolina. See that? So of the 3 states we're looking at here, really, North Carolina is going to be the driest. But this is the area that just, this past weekend got hammered with rainfall. We need a drier week here overall just to get the floodwaters out. So as we play through next Saturday into Sunday and Monday, most of the activity across the country is going to be here. But we are going to be keeping our eye just offshore because it appears as though there's going to be more convection there and some very heavy rainfall. And just as we saw with Ophelia, this is an area that is capable of producing what we call those homegrown systems, one that show up very quickly and have the potential for delivering a lot of rainfall. So because this rainfall forecast is highly nuanced and hyperlocal, I'm just going to give you some stats here, okay? So we're going to look next at the probability of getting an inch of rain over the next 10 days. And so you notice here in the mountains, then in the South Carolina, mostly a 50 to 70% chance of getting an inch. Wettest right down here. And then as you get into Georgia, it's mostly the southern half of Georgia has the highest probability of getting the wettest conditions. And that seems to make the most sense to me. But as I told you, as the activity really shifts back to the northwest and that weaker flow sets in over us, that's why our week 2 forecast looks drier overall. So you can see in all 3 models, the CPC, the European, and the GFS, they're all drier biased going into week 2, which would be October 2nd through October the 8th. So what we would need to prepare for is the following week. It seems as though the momentum and the flow is setting us up for week on, week off, okay? So let's talk temperatures, and then we'll get into that longer range and wrap this one up. Now, my forecast temperature maps over this week were exhibiting a bit of a cool bias that I didn't really believe in. Monday's got it. I think this is what the temperature spread's going to be on Monday. So almost 80 and then getting down here to southern Georgia well into the low 90s. Now, as we play into Tuesday and Wednesday, what I'm confused about, remember that high pressure cell which was bringing flow in a little bit like this in the low levels? I just think the models have biased this a little too cold. I don't think we're going to be quite that. I think we're going to see temperatures in the 70s is what I'm saying. So I think we're going to be in the low 70s here, not in the upper 60s. That's Wednesday into Thursday. I still think that's the case. But getting out there into Friday and Saturday, look at the cold coming in the northwest. Every time you see this, just think the jet stream's going to do that. And that's what's given us some weaker flow, and that's why week 2 is not looking as wet, but we should probably expect near normal temperatures. So take a look at it. Here's your next 5 days. So remember, we have that little bit of a cooler bias coming in from this direction. As we go from day 0 to 5 out there to day 5 through 10, we see normal temperatures returning, maybe even some mild weather. Very mild throughout the Midwest. And there's going to be a lot of harvest trying to get done here throughout this next 10-day time period, given how dry the crop is. But quite cool in the western United States as we go forward. So this is day 5 through 10. This is day 10 through 15. So it has this take on it that we're going to be seeing some more mild conditions as we progress forward. All right. I kind of want to move to that relatively quickly because I want to spend some time on these last slides here, okay? And if we go to the next one, this is what we're thinking about for the month of October. October through the first week of November is starting to show signs of more closer to normal precipitation for AgSouth territory. Wetter in the Midwest, helping to cure the drought. Wetter in the West, especially up here in this corner of the Northwest, helping to cure drought. This has been a major turn toward the wetter with time. Now, if you're thinking about an October with an El Niño, which is what we have, we tend to find this corridor and this corridor showing up wetter, and at times parts of California and Oregon. So again, just focus on these two areas. That's generally what we see in October. And October typically starts off warm and then has a big Arctic outbreak that typically hits after the first or second week of the month. That's what commonly happens when there's an El Niño. And we do definitely have an El Niño right now, as we've talked about for months. Now, seeing all of this, it's got me thinking about the MJO. Now, remember, I talk about the MJO all the time, but what it is it's a number, 1 through 8, that represents a geographical location from the western side of Africa, over the Indian Ocean, over Australia, and out into the western Pacific of where the biggest storms are. And right now, they're somewhere north of Australia. But they're expected, as you see in the forecast, to sweep through the Pacific Ocean. Now, if it does that, that's a very El Niño-like behavior. And what we know in the past is that when there is an El Niño, and you go into MJO phase 6, we're not there yet, we're in phase 4 right now. But if we get into phase 6 by maybe the second week of October, then that tends to produce a high over low block off the west coast and a pretty decent intrusion of some colder air. So I just showed you the next 15 days, and overall we saw mild conditions. But phase 6 could give us a second week of October push at colder air. That's what I'm going to be watching for. That's way out there in the forecast, but I'm going to be watching for it. But as I said, week on, week off. And if we keep moving around the phase diagram, let's go back to it here. So that's phase 6. What if it sweeps through phase 7 and gets over to phase 8? Well, that would be the week after that. And this is what tends to happen. We tend to put a ridge here over Greenland and a trough back in the west. So see how it's flip-flopping? And if that trough's in the west, then the flow comes in like this. We warm back up, but we get very active on weather again. And that's why I think the middle and end of October might see a lot of phase 8 in the MJO. What's helping it is the fact that the Southern Oscillation Index is negative. Now, I'm throwing a lot of terminology at you today, but remember, the Southern Oscillation Index is just a measure of pressure difference between Tahiti and Darwin. And that pressure difference needs to be negative, below -7, which is about here, in order to be considered El Niño. And this is what it's done over the last 30 days. We are way down there today at -15. So seeing that, I'm saying El Niño is on, it's controlling the pattern, and now let's get into the longer range. This is what was just released last week by the CPC. So it's important to note that they are expecting recovery in drought in the midsection of the country and down south. They've released a new 1-month outlook. This is for October. Notice how they've got us mild, but I'm telling you, the temperature pattern is going to go up, down, week in, week out. Okay? So it's mild overall, but don't rest on it. It's not going to just stay mild for the whole month. But I do buy into this. I do think this whole corridor is active. You say, well, why? That's where the subtropical jet's coming into the country. So it makes sense to me. Now, the other thing they released is their new long-range outlook. And this is a quick look at what they're expecting. Now, we've already looked at October. Why don't we just go November, December, January? During that time frame, they're expecting near normal temperatures for AgSouth, but warmer north. That's very typical El Niño. What about the precipitation side of it? Wet. The newest updates, again, are wet. And we can just keep going. This is November, December, January. Let's go to December, January. Let's go right to the heart of winter. Wet. What I'm expecting you to get out of this, you ready? Subtropical jet comes across. So watch for panhandle lows. Watch for Arklatex lows. Watch for Miller B lows, which come over and up. The Arklatex come up like this and race north. The panhandles hook south and then go like this. Or watch Miller A, which come out of the Gulf and go like that. Basically, everything gets going here and takes off. So let me get my drawings off there. This is our forecast for December, January, February on precipitation. Temperatures, it's like you just saw, mild north, cooler south compared to averages. And that forecast has been echoed by the government, by the European model. We just saw the government. This is the European model. This is October, November, December. Ready? November, December, January. Green is wet. And December, January, February. Same outlook. The National Multi-Model Ensemble says the same thing. December, January, February. Wet. Now I'm going to tell you something. Every one of these forecasts is based upon El Niño dominating the flow this winter. It's going to be a strong El Niño, probably 2 degrees C above average. So there's a lot of reason to say this is probably what it's going to look like. But remember, El Niño is just the base state. There are other factors we need to consider when looking at all of this. So please, please, please remember that. This is just a preliminary outlook for what this winter is going to be now that we've started fall, and understand that there can always be subtle changes and shifts and other things taking over. All right, but this is the best evidence we've got as of today. All right, from there, I want to give you one last thing to think about. I look at the MJO in a lot of different ways. Do you see the numbers 1 through 8 down here? Okay, so the MJO right now, remember we saw it was in 4. That's today. Do you see the blue-green? That's how you trace the MJO versus time. So here's today going through the next 15 days to October 9th. Now look, as this moves, where is it moving to? Well, this is a diagram that has got right in here. So this is time versus longitude, okay, for this latitude range, the tropics. And if you see this, I'll put arrows so it's a little clearer. They're all moving the best rising motion over South America. Now, why that's important is South America needs rain. These folks down here are waiting for better rains to aggressively start planting. And you notice, look at this, see it coming in here? By the time we get to the end of this week and into early next week, more normal monsoonal flow is beginning to show up in this area. Now, this might be enough for some folks down there to consider going, but I want to remind you of something. The month of October is the most critical month in Brazil for planting. And I want to show you why that is. This is where they currently stand on soybean planting as of the 22nd of September. So, I mean, it's just the beginning, just started. But if you notice, this is beginning of October here. So beginning of October to the end of October, they typically plant almost 90% of the crop. So what we need to watch is where the planting progress will be. Last year, we were almost the fastest when looking at the past 5 years. And this year, we are currently ahead of pace by just a very, very tiny amount. But if the monsoonal moisture comes in, we're going to expect to see this move quickly. So I'll cover other places around the world in subsequent videos, but I think that's enough for us today. I'll wrap it up here and tell you all to have a great week. I look forward to talking to you next Monday. Thanks.